Before we get started, I want to share one of my favorite time-saving tools, Descript. I use it to transcribe interviews, generate podcast show notes, create short video clips, and record easy-to-follow tutorials for my clients. It's also an incredibly helpful tool for grad students and busy professionals. You can use it to take notes on readings, prep for presentations, and make your work more accessible with captions and transcripts. If you're looking for a more efficient way to manage your workload, check out my affiliate link in the show notes. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. This is your host, Doctora Yvette. Today, we are talking about navigating and thriving within or outside creative writing programs. So we're talking about all things creative writing careers. Our guest is someone near and dear to me. I'm so excited to have her here today. Her name is Maceo Nafisah Cabrera Estévez, and she's the co-founder of the Muslim Writer Salon. She was the former owner of Booklandia, specializing in Spanish and bilingual books. She works with writers globally through book coaching, writing courses, and writing retreats. She is from Brooklyn and Oakland and now living in Portugal. Yes, that's right, with her 2 children. I'm excited to have her today, so welcome to the podcast, Maceo.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
You got me a little nervous there. But I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, how you got to where you are today. So I'm specifically curious about your journey as a writer and anything you're comfortable sharing tied to that too.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I love talking about this, writing and being a writer. I started writing when I was a child, and in college, I took a creative writing course, and I went to school in Massachusetts, and I was like one of the few Latinas in the school, in the college, but also like one of the few women of color in the program. And then I suggested to my professor of like, here are some books that you should be using in your course instead of all these white authors. And since then, that's what I've been doing. I've been like writing and also giving these suggestions of like what other books professors and teachers of writing should be utilizing in their classroom. And I did a master's degree in writing and consciousness. It was in San Francisco. It was New College of California. I moved from Brooklyn to Oakland for that and then lived in Oakland for 17 years. I struggled with grad school, and I struggled going because I felt like I needed something practical. Like I was in the nonprofit world. I should have been doing management and stuff like that. But then I decided, no, I have to do what I've always loved doing, and that's writing. So I did that, and I went in doing creative nonfiction and left doing playwriting. I wrote a play and I toured it in the US. Then I got married, had kids, and didn't write for like a decade. So then after moving to Portugal, that's when I started writing again and wanting to build a community because I was lacking that living here. Then I started the Muslim Writer Salon, and it's online and it's global, so it fits.
Wow. There's so many things that came up that I feel like I could just ask you to say more about because it'll resonate with a lot of my listeners. First is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you felt almost obligated to pursue a master's degree.
Yes, definitely.
And that
Yes.
you also said that you struggled in grad school. Were they similar struggles, like tied to undergrad where you were one of few, or was it related to other things? Like what were some of those struggles that came up in
Yeah,
grad
in
school?
grad school, well, yeah, I did feel like I should go to grad school, that just having a bachelor's degree wasn't going to be enough, and I should be specializing in something. And and so my struggles with grad school was is just like the course load and also having to work. Like that was like a big thing because I wasn't living on campus. I was in a completely new city. I was, navigating that. And also it was the same with I'm in a writing and consciousness program, and we're still reading the white canon, and spending like half of the time dealing with that. And then being like, why are they paying me for this? And having to deal with that for myself and for others, like that was, but yeah, I struggled with the coursework and just doing everything at one time.
Right, that's something I notice a lot among students, both in college and in grad school, in more quote unquote traditional disciplines where you're expected to learn the quote unquote canon, which basically
Mhm.
just means white people's literature.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, because you wanting to become a specialist in what interests you, you're having to do extra work. You got to learn the canon, then you got to learn your subject area expertise. And then if you're working class or low income, you've got to work. And not everybody faces those same challenges of having to figure out your finances, having to work. I'm not sure at what point you didn't have a family yet when you were in your graduate program.
No, I didn't. No,
Okay.
no.
But that comes up too for some like folks who are parents, and add to that the racism, sexism, and all the other microaggressions. It compounds into a whole series of struggles that have nothing to do with our potential, right? Or our capacity. And it's all about systemic issues. All this to say, I want to transition us to talking about should we go to, like, who should go to sorry, I'm just like laughing because I feel like the setup here is so strong. But, we can talk about the pros and cons. So let's talk about thoughts related to creative writing programs. A lot of people feel like they have to complete a master's degree or the coveted MFA to pursue a creative career of some sort. And so I'm curious about your thoughts based on your lived experience, based on your professional career, everything you do supporting writers globally. When does it make sense to attend one, if at all? When
Mhm.
doesn't it make sense? Is it necessary? And again, the pros and cons of pursuing a creative writing program, not necessarily a career, but the program per se.
Program, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say first that I'm not an advocate for creatives doing an MFA or an MA in creative writing. I'm not an advocate for that. So just off the bat, that's my stance on it. And the reason why I feel like, especially for BIPOC people, like you're not going to get the support. Like I feel you're not going to get the support that you need, and there's certain things that are lacking in creative writing programs that writers need, like understanding like the business of writing, right? Like that's not really part of it. Like really, like sometimes just like really understanding that, and like the networking, like the networking that's needed, like how to really build a writing routine, like how to do research and stuff like that. So I feel there's that's lacking. But there's also like now versus from when I went to graduate school, there's a variety of writing programs. And so there's ones that are more focused and have like their niche, and there's programs that do have professors of color, BIPOC professors, and that makes a difference. So if someone was going to go into a writing program, it's really thinking about like why you want to spend the money and the time to do this. Because for me, how I work best is like I work best, learning on my own and trying to piece it all together and am doing it through community. So for me, that's very important. And it's, I thought at that stage that going to graduate school would give me those things, but it didn't. It not necessarily that it's not going to do it, but it's just like you really have to find the right place. So it's like who the professors are, like, do you like their writing? And looking at the courses, talking to people that were part of a program, going to there's the AWP, the Association of Writing Programs, and there's a conference every year, and then you could like check out all the writing programs there. So if someone really wanted to do that, that would be great. But I feel like the people that do it, it's because they want to get into academics. So they want to be a professor of creative writing. So then you would need an MFA for that. But there's also, other areas that you could go into. So I guess like the pros would be, if you're going to work with a certain writer, if you're going to work with a professor and you like their work and you really want to hold that, you get, let's say, a scholarship for it, and it's like a free ride, like, and you could do it. I would do that, then I would be like, okay, I have a goal to do this. But I do think that it's kind of like a money sucker, and you could invest money in different ways and not have it be so much.
I will also say and echo I echo the same, or I share the same sentiment as you, in that I am not a big fan of encouraging graduate school, which is ironic because the work that I do is about supporting people in graduate school. But there are so many instances where it just doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
And for creative programs in particular, and also for a lot of master's degree programs, sometimes the return on investment just doesn't make sense. It's just so expensive. Like you said, they are considered the cash cow programs that help to support departments so that they can stay afloat, so that they can keep the other programs running. And there's this expectation that you get a professional degree and you're going to get a professional salary. And that, like I said, going back to the ROI, it's not guaranteed. It's not like they are providing you with jobs right on the spot. And it's not guaranteed that they're going to give you access to that coveted network that's going to land you those contracts, et cetera, that you want. And so all this to say that, just like you said, if you get a scholarship, if there is someone you really want to work with, if you're interested in pursuing the academic route, and even then I would say proceed with caution, because academic careers are very, very hard to pursue, even if you do everything right, just because of how the system is built and how it's changing with all the changes in higher ed right now and all the budget cuts. But in any case, I'm curious, for folks who want training, they want support, they want community, they want the skills, they want to network, and they're trying to build up this career and this portfolio. If they've decided maybe I don't want to go the MFA route, what options do they have? I know you mentioned AWP. So aside from attending this conference, finding out about other programs, are there other things that they can do?
Definitely. So, okay, I feel like so old school with this, but like I get the magazine Poets and Writers, and that was like my first, like writing magazine that I got like in my 20s, and I felt like, okay, like this is me being a writer. But it's so amazing, and it has a lot of like articles, and it has a lot of resources, and it also has like grants, calls for submissions, contests, and then it has information on different writing courses and stuff like that. So there's Poets and Writers, and then there's also like so many writing communities now. Like it's really amazing. Like, so yes, I I built the Muslim Writer Salon, and it's for Muslim writers, but I'm also the community manager for the sanctuary, and it's for Black women writers. And then there's various online writing communities as well, like depending, like you could put in like, like you could put like ADHD and writer, and then like you'll get something up, And then there's also local writing centers. So, and other online classes. So I just, and then there's Substack. So, like Substack has a really great, community that you could just find over notes, or there's Substack pages that are of different writing communities. So there's really so much. There's really so much out there. It's just kind of like figuring out like what you want to focus on, and do it like little by little to not overwhelm yourself.
That was what I was about to say, is that if anything, sometimes having too many options without a set structure can
Mhm.
discourage people. And that's why they then go to the graduate programs, because they're like,
Yes.
oh, there's a curriculum and I just do as I'm
Mhm.
told. I know what to do, when to do it,
Yes.
versus
Mhm.
having to create your own path,
Yes.
which
Mm.
is ironically like that's actually what you need to do to learn to be a good writer and to make a living off of it, because entrepreneurship is very similar in that
Yes.
respect. But is there like do you have any tips for how to discern, when you're going through and looking at different communities and trying to come up with different things to do to develop as a writer? Like, how do you figure out what's right for you, or even when it's necessary to build a community? In your case, you did build a community. So, yeah, maybe you can talk a little bit about that too. Are you feeling stuck in your academic or professional journey? Whether you're in the thick of grad school, preparing to apply, or navigating a career transition, you don't have to do this alone. I offer one-on-one coaching for first-gen BIPOC grad students and professionals who want compassionate structure, personalized support, tools and strategies, and tangible results. Together, we can co-create action plans that center your lived experience, your capacity, and your long-term goals. Whether you need help with time management, confidence building, motivation, or big picture career decisions, I've got you. Clients I've worked with have passed their qualifying exams, finished and defended their dissertations, mapped out career changes, and built sustainable systems. And most importantly, they've also felt seen and supported throughout the process. All of my coaching packages include access to a resource library, voice memo support, and guidance in between sessions, so you're never on your own. If you're ready to invest in yourself, visit gradschoolfemtoring.com/coaching to learn more and book a free consultation. I'd love to support you in making aligned, confident moves in your academic and professional life.
Yeah, like for me, build like what I built the community for a couple of reasons. Like one is like after leaving Booklandia in the US, and and seeing how vibrant you know the Latina and Spanish speaking community is in writing. I also felt like it was needed with Muslims, and also like understanding that like there's so many different types of Muslims, from like it's like a global religion, and then like there's different variations of how people practice and how people write, whether they write about it or not. And so for me, it's just like everyone has a unique voice, and everyone should be supported in that. So I wanted to create a space where that was part of it. And it's really like figuring out like what's really important to you, like, and where you would feel that you could grow the most. And so it would be like connecting with writers, whether it's a friend or just, like online, and just connecting and seeing, what they do, going if locally, like people, there's like open mics or the library, there's different things like that. But it's, like a lot of it really with writing and being a writer is, really developing your mindset and developing like you can do this. that like this is, if you're writing, it's because you're meant to be writing, and and also understanding that your first draft, there's going to be some sentences that are just horrible. You're not going to share them. That's fine. Like you have a first draft and it's not going to be exactly how you want it to be. And that's fine. The whole thing is about getting it out there. And it's just like, so in community, it's helpful because you're with other people that have similar experiences, whether they're on the same as you or ahead or, I don't want to say ahead or behind, but like in different places. But one of the things is like as writers, we know like what it feels like to write, how amazing it is, how it feels like to be scared to show your writing, like the fear of rejection, like how to turn it around, so, like all these things. So, we see writing and writers as doing something by themselves, but no one really does it by themselves. Like they have people supporting them in some sort of way.
Right. And going back to the mindset piece, that stood out to me a lot for a couple of reasons. Like, one, I think I've shared on the podcast before that whenever I share my writing, it feels like I'm a nudist. It feels like such a vulnerable and sometimes even intimate thing to share with others. And then two, I know that for a lot of folks, especially if they are first gen in college or first gen in the US, or just like the first to pursue this type of career path, that imposter phenomenon kicks in because maybe they don't have access, again, to the network or to familial support to help them navigate these challenges. And then, of course, there's just the fear of being perceived, the fear of not being good enough, the fear of, what if this doesn't work out? And so I know the mindset piece is not something that you can just work on overnight, but do you have any insights just to help, especially either new or emerging writers or youth in general who are interested in pursuing a creative writing career? Just some insights for them to help them to work on that mindset piece.
Yeah, I really enjoy reading about other writers and their process. And because I learned so much about how they've done things, and how they've navigated this aspect. So I would encourage writers to do that because then they will and then they will see that, like you'll hear the same thing over and over again. Every time, it doesn't matter if I wrote 20 books. Every time I write a new book, it's like I'm starting over again. Like after like hearing that like 3 or 4 times, I was like, wow, that's really true. Like it's something that keeps on happening. And then, just like learning, just just treating it as like, like not thinking so much about the end product, but thinking about like the process and trying to enjoy the process and trying to, think of it as like, like the more I do it, like how do I feel? Do I feel do I feel joyful? Do I, like how do I feel after doing it? Okay, I want to keep on having that feeling. So going back to that and just understanding that like having fears and having doubts is normal, like it's just part of it. It's part of it. So it's just like acknowledging it and being like, okay, I'm feeling this right now. I'm not going to let it stop me, and voicing it. I actually, through the Muslim Writer Salon, we have like a weekly course that's about the writing journey, and it's basically about building the practice, like it's not even craft. I don't do anything with craft. It's more about building your practice, talking about what comes up, talking about fears, talking about your inner critic. We have like an exercise where we like name our inner critic, and then have a conversation with them. So, and see like, hey, like, okay, I don't like when you do this thing, so this is what I'm going to tell you now. And just like acknowledging that. Or like we have an exercise too of like asking your writing project what it needs from you to finish, to work on it, and that exercise is pretty deep. Like it's really it's really helped a lot of because it's just like really, eye opening. So it's just like for me, it's just like the radical acceptance that this is just how it is. And, like some days are going to be better than others, but I'm just going to keep on going.
Since you mentioned the topic of process, may I ask a little bit about just like a sneak peek into what your writing process looks like?
Yeah.
Or is that too much? If it's too much, that's
No,
okay.
no. It's actually really cool because I teach this, right? Because I'm constantly talking about it, then I have to analyze myself too, So when I realize what I do instead of because sometimes we just do things, right? And we don't even realize what we're doing. So okay, so a lot of times I I think about something, like I have an idea. I have an idea that I want to write about. And then I listen to music and I start cleaning.
British?
Yeah. And while I'm listening to music and I'm cleaning, it's playing in my head. Like I'm writing it in my head. So I'm very visual. So it's kind of like a movie. So I like all the scenes start coming together. So once I feel like, okay, and it happens for a while. So I do that for a little bit. Sometimes I have to go for a walk, so I'm kind of like developing it in my mind. And then I go to the page and then I just start writing. So it's fun. It's actually it's a lot of fun because it's not just on the page, like it's just like I'm cultivating it for a little bit and it's like getting there and then I'm able to write. There are some times that I'm just like, oh, I have this feeling and I just get on the computer, and I start writing, but then it's just like, oh, what happens? Like then there's like a pause, which is fine too. Sometimes I pause and I go back to it the next day. I like wait, I go back to it the next day and then, keep on writing. But the most fun I have, even if it's deep, like deep stuff, is when I let it go in my mind first.
That reminds me of how I come up with my best ideas in the shower. It's doing that kind of when you're not really thinking about what you're doing, so it allows you to then think about something else. And
Yes.
I don't even know what that. I'm sure there's a science behind it of like when we're in a more relaxed state, we are more creative, and that's why actually I don't think procrastination is a bad thing. It doesn't always have to be because a certain level of procrastination actually increases creativity. I remember
Yeah.
reading about that and thinking, oh, that's awesome. So I'm not always, this is why all my best ideas come up when I'm avoiding something. So in any case, well, I love hearing that. I love hearing a little bit about your process. I'm curious if there was a question though that maybe I didn't get to ask you or something that you wanted to make sure you wanted to address in the podcast today.
I'm trying to think of your questions. And yeah, no, I just, yeah, for me, with like creative writing and creative writing programs, like I feel like there's a lot that is needed for writers and just let yourself figure it out, let yourself explore and see what you enjoy. And it doesn't always have to, a lot of writers write in different genres, or don't write like, some writers like, I'll just do novels, but I'm never going to write poetry. And that's fine. Like not, just like really seeing what flows and sticking to them. Like I like whatever it is, just being more exploratory.
Any other final words of advice do you want to offer to our audience members who, especially, I'm thinking about the folks who are really wanting to pursue this as a career, not that there's nothing bad with pursuing it as a hobby, but some
Mhm.
folks are like, no, I want this to be how I make a living. Any insights for those folks?
Yeah, just being aware of, the business of being a writer. So it's difficult to get into. It doesn't mean that you can't, and if you are a creative writer and you're working on novels and stuff like that, it's, it's there's a process in getting an agent. There's a process in getting a book deal. So it's just learning about that and just keep on going, submitting your work to different literary magazines. There's a process for, and it's just like it takes time, and it has to be like something that you want to do, and it takes time. And you also have to think about like what are the other things that I can do with my income, because writing a book, like, not everyone gets like a huge advance right away. So you could be one of them, but it's always the case. And so it's just learning the business of writing, and understanding that it's like one of those things that you can make a living. But it might be like, okay, I'm gonna like do some copywriting for a while, like I'm gonna do my writing in different ways, or ghost writing and stuff. So like it's just figuring that out, and see, what works for you.
What that reminds me of is that as what I'm hearing is that becoming a creative writer and pursuing that as a profession involves in many ways becoming an entrepreneur and also learning about the industry. And one of the misconceptions that I remember I had when I was in college was that anybody who published a book was making a lot of money. And I didn't know about the differences between publishing with the trade press, publishing with the hybrid press, publishing with an academic press, or even publishing on your own, self-publishing, and how there are very different ways that people get paid or not. And in my case with publishing my book is Grad School for Me, myself and my co-author, we're making pennies per book. And so the way that we're able to even earn something from the book is not from getting people to buy the book. It's actually from what comes up surrounding the book. So book talks, book panels, workshops, etc. And I'm saying this not to highlight myself. I'm saying using this as an example that if you want to pursue this as a career, you're going to want to learn how to monetize in different ways, including in your case, you mentioned that copywriting is an option. Some of the some of the most prominent creative writers out there, that's what they did. They had a 9 to 5 that was related to the industry, and they also then wrote their books, but they didn't start, generating the big sales until later on. So I want to echo that. It takes time and it requires learning about business, and it requires also, unfortunately and fortunately, networking. But I would say, if it helps to network in a way that feels good for you, or build community with the right people, because what I've learned from my own friends and colleagues who are creative writers and do this for a living is that the field of the writing industry is very similar to academia, in all the worst ways, just to keep it real. And so all this to say that, like, you have to, in your case, like you reminded us, build community. And for folks who actually are interested in the Muslim Writer Salon or in any of your other offerings, I'd love for you to tell us more about that, about your work, about how folks can connect with you or maybe be part of the communities that you're also part of.
Yeah, thank you. So I do book coaching and I also do editing. So sometimes I just help writers get their ideas in order to write a book. So I work with nonfiction writers and fiction writers both. With nonfiction, I work in building a book proposal, and with fiction writers, I love working with people that have already done like a draft and then need to get it better, and then helping them through the process of getting an agent and doing that. And so I do that as, freelance work. And then I'm the community manager for the sanctuary. And it's by Read, Write, and Create, and it's for BIPOC women. And I'm also a part of the Muslim Writer Salon. I'm the co-founder for that. And I could give you the links for all of those. But you can find us on Instagram and Substack as well. I do writing retreats. I host writing retreats. And I also, if someone wants to lead, like has me come in and facilitate writing retreats for their organization or community, I do that as well.
Love that. So we will make sure to add the links to all of the above in the show notes. And I just want to thank you for sharing space with us today, sharing your insights. Oh my gosh, I've missed you. So I'll say I met Maceo in my time in Portugal, and I'm so glad that we get to reconnect in this way. And sending you all the good vibes in hopes that, the right folks will connect with you and reach out to support your work.
Thank you so much. Thanks. And I love following what you've been doing. It's been amazing to see your journey. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.